afternoon. Mr. Billy Byrd is our guest speaker today, the DA of Upshur County. He's been with us since 2007, and when you don't find him at the courthouse, of course I want to be on the other side of that, he is playing ball with his kids, he's preaching, and he's busy in our community. With no further ado, Mr. Billy Byrd, please.
Well, good afternoon. I certainly want to thank Ms. Janice Gage for asking me to come here today. I want to thank the Rotary. I want to thank all the people that are so involved in this community that are in this room today that do so much. Just thank you very much for the opportunity to be here. I was glad to know and to see that no one kneeled when we said the Pledge of Allegiance. That's wonderful, and I knew that we wouldn't be doing that in this room, and that's a blessing in and of itself. I'm going to be here to speak to you about something very important about jury selection. I'm going to talk about the importance of that and try to emphasize some very important points of jury selection in our community. Now, currently, we have been shut down due to the pandemic that's affected all of us in our lives and our businesses. It's really taken a toll. So we have not had a jury trial since February of this year. The state has really clamped us down and prevented us from having jury trials. But I will tell you, we have one scheduled, and we're actually going to be using this facility to pick a jury October the 19th, the week coming up in October the 19th, and that's going to involve a very serious juvenile matter. That trial won't be open to the public because it is a juvenile trial, but we will hopefully that will go as well as we can expect under the state rules that they've put forth for us, because we don't have enough room at the Justice Center. And even during the trial actually will be here at the Civic Center as well. So we're blessed to have this facility in our community to be able to bring jurors in when we need something this important. And hopefully after this first one, the state will see, because there's a plan that has to be signed off on by the state before we can ever just come in here and have a jury trial currently. A lot of people are unaware of that, but the state has approved the current plan that we have for our trial in October. If that goes well, hopefully in November and December, and as we move forward, things will get back to what we consider to be normal. And I want to share with you a few things that I have found, and I think you'll find this to be true and relevant. Our world has truly changed, and I think that we can all agree. We have a wide range of ages in the room here this afternoon, some young, some seniors, and somewhere in between as well. All have a very valuable role in our society and when it comes to jury selection process. I want to explain, and I think when you hear this, you'll understand how much and can relate to some of this. I found this in 1967. This is an illustration of how things have changed. Scenario 1, Jack goes dove hunting. When Jack goes dove hunting before school, he comes to school and he has his shotgun in the back window in 1967. When he drives up to the school parking lot, the principal sees him and the principal goes out to meet him. And the principal went to his truck and got his shotgun out to show Mark his shotgun that he used dove hunting. That was in 1967. Today, what we find is the school will go into lockdown. FBI will be called. Jack's going to be hauled off to jail and never see his truck nor gun again. Counselors are going to be called for all the children that are traumatized by seeing this weapon. My, how things have changed. And I know we can find humor in that, but there's a lot of truth in that little scenario as well. Another one, Johnny and Mark, and this one's certainly relevant. We're going to get into this in just a moment. Johnny and Mark get into a fist fight after school. Crowd gathers, they watch what happens. Johnny and Mark shake hands afterwards, and they're best of friends. Today, police are called, kids have cell phones, everything is immediately gone viral from the school. Both parties, Johnny and Mark, are arrested, both charged with assault, and both expelled from school even though Johnny started it. Now we hear that, but we see these things every single day going on. And we go to scenarios such as the days and times when you could take aspirin or Advil to school for headaches that your parents could send with you to school. And that's not the case anymore, because just as soon as one of your friends needed the Advil and you handed it to them, we see people being charged with drug distribution in schools. That's how silly some things have gotten in our society. But through all these scenarios, here's the important thing. We hear this, and I'm telling you, these things happen. This is a reality, and while we find some humor, it truly goes on. At the end of that, who's there to sort those things out? Well, the prosecution's office, the district attorney's office, is charged with seeking justice. That does not mean that we charge people to get convictions, to gain records, and to say, look at what I've done. Justice must be administered equally across the board, no matter who the person is on the other side. And with justice, we always have to exercise some good old-fashioned common sense. And we need a lot more common sense going on in this world, in this country today. I think we could all agree on that. But in these scenarios, if we have a jury that is required to make a decision, it's important to remember, and I've now been in the district attorney's office here in Upshur County since 2007. And for almost 14 years now here, and 6 years prior to that in Gregg County, I've been at this a long time. And I want you to know, and I mean no offense by this, please don't take this, but I see a lot of fine, upstanding citizens in this room this afternoon. Good people, people that I know, people that work hard in this community. But I'll also tell you that I see people in this room I've never seen on a jury panel either. Now, I know that you're busy, and I know you have obligations, no doubt. But when you receive jury summons, if you've received those, you need to understand the importance behind that summons, and that's what I hope to get into a little bit this morning. We have upcoming the trial I explained to you. Instead of Johnny and Mark going behind a school building and fist fighting and all that scenario I told you about, the world's more dangerous now. And what happens now in society is it's not just two fist fights, there are generally weapons being involved. The trial that will come up, and I can't get into details in case you're on the jury panel, but I will tell you this, that trial is going to involve juveniles. A set of juveniles that were deciding to sell drugs, a set of young men, 17, who wanted to purchase those drugs. Well, when they went to sell those drugs, something went bad, horribly wrong. Everyone had guns and weapons, and one of the juveniles started shooting, shot his best friend who's paralyzed for the rest of his life. There's no coming back from those things. He is alive, but he's not ever going to come back from what happened there. That's an important case. That's an important case for a lot of people. We have to have good jurors that are willing to come up and hear the facts and evidence of that case and make an important decision. We have to have jurors, community members. And if we don't ever have that, can you imagine what society would look like, even locally? I want to give you an example as well. And this happens, and I want to give you a preview of our upcoming trials. There are going to be many like this. We have children that are neglected. We have children that are neglected mentally, neglected physically, and they are sexually abused right here in our community, right around us, within walking distance from this building here. That this is going on in our community. Now, can you imagine when you hear that, it immediately makes you cringe, and I know that. It makes you just want to just kind of ball up, and I don't want to hear this. It makes me uncomfortable. Kind of like when the preacher gets going on Sunday morning and toes start getting stepped on. I don't know, preacher. Maybe want to dial that back. But if it's the truth, that's what needs to be told. And the truth is, when it comes to jury selection, in cases like sexual abuse of children, it is so important to have people that are willing to come with an open mind. Yes, it makes us cringe. That doesn't disqualify you. But so many times people hear the charge and the title of a crime and they immediately shut down. And they immediately raise their hand and find an excuse to walk themselves out of the room. Now, if I was to go around and ask, and I'm not going to, but if I was going to ask one of you and just pick you randomly to explain your last intimate moment, you wouldn't want any part of that. Nobody else would want any part of that either. Imagine a little child, boy or girl, because it goes both ways, that is called to come forward and talk about something that's happened to them. Can you imagine how they must feel to talk about that in front of strangers? When somebody they love and trust has broken that trust and love and done something that horrible, even though it's an allegation, and it is, that's an allegation when you come to jury selection. You have to wait for the state to put forth evidence. It's our job and our burden to prove that case beyond a reasonable doubt. But if it is proven, and when it is proven, then there has to be punishment behind that. And if juries walked in and said, look, I don't want any part of that. I can't do it. I've got a business to run. People are depending on me. I've got payroll to make. I don't have time. And if we had everybody on the panel say that, what's going to happen? We won't have a jury. Okay? So then we'll try another month. And if the same thing continues to happen, we never have a jury come in and is able to sit and say, listen, I might not like the title, I might not be comfortable, but I'm going to do my civic duty and responsibility. In Rotary, you have responsibilities. You have obligations here. It's no different than when you receive that summons to appear for jury selection, but there are duties and responsibilities each of us have. And I'm here today to encourage you, if you get that, look for the opportunity, look for the responsibility that you have to serve the community. And it's not serving just that one victim. You're serving something greater, because every decision that's made in a court of law, it has an effect. It has an effect. I can give you story after story, an illustration. Recently, there was a case in which we tried it, and there was a large sentence handed down by our jury. In fact, the superintendent of Gilmer ISD was on that jury, 99-year sentence. It was strong punishment, and it was deserved. But let me tell you what happened. From that courtroom of that trial, that sentence and what happened started resonating, started getting around. And all of a sudden, my phone started ringing, started lighting up from lawyers who said, hey, my client decided he wants to take that offer that was extended to him. See, it has a greater effect. So what you do as a jury, what you do as a citizen when you're called in jury duty has an effect beyond just what you do in that one courtroom. Now, I'll say this too. Even if you're not selected, you'll never know completely. I always try to explain this, but you'll never fully get to see that just showing up, how many people make a decision that morning that they don't want to have a jury and their cases are resolved. We have to resolve cases. We can't try every case. There's no possible way. We can't. Plea bargains is something that society makes it look bad. That's not a bad thing, and I'll explain why. Plea bargains ought to reflect the wishes of the community, and they ought to reflect what justice is in that case. I was assigned to a case in Cass County. I get assigned in other counties outside of Upshur. In that case yesterday, I was in a courtroom before a judge out of Texarkana yesterday afternoon involving a longtime police officer who, on one occasion, one time committed a crime and touched his stepdaughter in a way that he shouldn't have 14 years ago. He was charged. He was brought to justice. In that case, the details and the facts, visiting with the victim, who's now an adult, a mother, has children of her own, whose husband, a DPS trooper for the state of Texas, sitting down and going through all the scenarios of that case and what that case would look like in a courtroom and what would be required to prove his guilt, and the witnesses that would have to be called. And you got to imagine there was a lot of family members that were involved in that case. There was a decision made that instead of picking a jury, putting them in the box in Cass County, which I was willing to do, a decision was made to do something else other than a prison sentence that resulted in lifetime registration as a sex offender. I made him surrender his peace officer license because he was still a peace officer, but not anymore. That there was a variety of other very strict requirements that he will have to do. And the victim said, that's what I want, because I don't want to see these other family members go through what you will have to do to them on cross-examination. And so that reflected the will of the victim, but it also reflected what justice was in that particular case. Now, I don't believe in anybody crossing the line with a child, but I say that to give you an illustration that while we fill the prison systems with sex offenders, there are times and occasions when something else is required. And I give you that as an example that just happened yesterday in another county that you would not have known about unless I told you this morning. The trial that this morning we have juvenile offenders are on the rise and they're getting more violent. We pled a juvenile offender who's 15 years of age this morning. He is on his way to a secure placement facility for an aggravated robbery, handgun. Some in this room here today, John and I were by your business looking for video footage that captured some of those crimes. And so I appreciate everybody's cooperation because we have to have evidence. And I thank you for always being willing to help. But that case resulted in a juvenile, and I hope the juvenile system is designed for rehabilitation and punishment, but the main goal is rehabilitation. I hope that young man is rehabilitated in the facility he's in, and so that he does not graduate into the adult system. Sometimes we have success, not always, not always. So juries are going to be called on to do different cases and provide different roles, but the main role of a jury is to listen fairly with an open mind and to render justice and to return a verdict that is true, fair, and based on the evidence. The state's got to prove it. The state always needs to be able to prove it, or they don't ever need to be standing in front of a jury selecting a jury. Time, money, a lot of money is involved in these things, and we have to be doing it correctly. So with that, that was just a brief reminder and encouragement on jury selection, the importance of it, and we have some upcoming trials. I hope, if we're able to do it safely and meet the state standards, that we're going to be able to start putting juries back in the box. That's part of the job that I enjoy, and I enjoy trying cases, and I enjoy seeking justice on your behalf. It's on behalf of the state, and that's part of your behalf as the community here in Upshur County. So with that, I'm going to open up any questions that you may have. I know y'all haven't been meeting back together for a long time. I could talk for the rest of the afternoon, but I'm not going to do that. But I want to open it up for any questions. Mr. Marshall.
How many people are you going to contact to come for the 19th of October? How many will you actually solicit to come, and how many will actually percentage will show up?
Well, that's a very good question. If everybody couldn't hear, how many are we going to contact? We're going to contact close to 400. I'm hopeful that we can get 80. Cass County summon are sending out summons for 550. I was talking to their DA yesterday, and they are expecting out of 550, they're hoping to get 50 to respond. And that's the other thing. We have so many that don't respond. Now, understand, Judge Fowler does a great job. He's doing a great job as district judge. And he has the authority to say, Sheriff, I want you to go round up all these people that didn't respond. That's the law. You can be brought in. Now, no one wants to do that. Judge Fowler doesn't want to be put in that position. Judge Parrish didn't want to be put in that position. No judge wants to. But that's what the law says that you can do. But we have to have juries sitting in the box. Otherwise, victims get no justice. And on the flip side, if you're a defense attorney, they're wanting justice for their client. Somebody charged with an offense. justice has to be served, and if you can't get an agreement, it requires juries to make those decisions. Yes, sir. Mr. Dean?
Well, you mentioned rehab, rehabilitation,
Yes, sir.
and so where's the fine line crossover between just pure punishment and rehab? I mean, how do they go hand in hand, or are they?
Well, you're asking a very complicated question. It's a good question, but it's complicated. I can tell you that is taking years and years of a lot of hard work and experience to try to make the right decision. And I'm not going to tell you I'm perfect. I make mistakes like everyone else. I try to do my very, very best to make sure if I am plea bargaining a case, number one, my victim, if it's a a crime against a person, an assault, robbery, something like that, or heaven forbid a sexual assault, they're going to be in the courtroom with me because they're going to be on board with everything we're doing. I'm not going to do something without them being fully advised of the case, the facts, the strengths, and weaknesses. There's weaknesses in all cases. Even if you have an offense committed on a video, you think, well, that's slam dunk. I warn prosecutors when I train them all the time, never say those words. There is no such thing as a slam dunk case. If anybody says that, they are ill-experienced and inexperienced because they don't know what they're doing. No case is a slam dunk. So it takes a lot of experience to determine that, influence from the victim. They don't decide, we decide, I decide ultimately, but I always want their input in that. Just like I did in Cass County yesterday, we were locked in step every step of the way, and they are law enforcement people, so they understand all of it, which actually helped. That did help in that case. Yes, sir.
You touched on it a minute ago. You talked about how the younger crime is, younger generation or younger people is getting more involved in crime. Do you think partly because of what they're watching on television now, or you have any other ideas about that? That's pretty much an opinion is what I'm asking.
I've got a lot of ideas about that. Some of that goes beyond my role as district attorney, but I will tell you that you are correct. We are maximized on our budget for placement of juveniles in the state. We have a budget, and we have, right now currently, we are maxed out on our placement of children across the state in different facilities. We currently have juveniles that are in JDC, that is the equivalent of the Upshur County Jail for Adults. That's the juvenile holding facility in Longview and in Marshall, and we have in Tyler. That's how many, we have juveniles all over right now. You can result in television, but a lot of people will do that, and I don't disagree with that, but I think more often than not, what it is a breakdown of the family. And I'm going to be honest with you, gentlemen. The next year, I'm going to be having this conversation with my 12-year-old baseball team about something that's happened, nothing criminal, but we need to be developing the next generation of good men. Please, women, do not take any offense to that, but we need better equipped men growing up and making better decisions and being better leaders. Not that women cannot be good leaders. Don't take offense to that. But I mean, if the question was asked to me, we need better men involved because we have a lot of single mothers that are raising children, doing a very good job. But it was ordained that it was to be the man and woman in the home raising, and we don't have enough of that anymore. Yes, sir. Mr. Williams.
Tell me how many hours, like the case in Cass County, kind of ballpark, how many hours did you and the investigator have just in that one case?
That's a good question. We traveled back and forth to Cass County. In fact, John won't mind me saying this, the last time, about a month ago, we traveled over there, and on the way back, there was a little cough in the car, which resulted in John getting 103 fever that night, which resulted in him having COVID-19 and 11 days of fever with that. I was right next to him all day, and somehow, by God's grace, I did not get COVID. But we traveled the better part of this year. We've got, I don't know how many hours. It's a lot of hours. And on that, and I want to point this out, The law now is, used to, the law was a district judge in a local jurisdiction could appoint a local lawyer to handle the matter where the DA was conflicted. The DA in Cass County was conflicted because the defendant was a deputy sheriff currently when these allegations came up, so she needed someone else. The district judge appointed me. There is no additional pay for that. And you don't pay for that locally. Well, I guess you do in a way for the gas money and the travel expense and the tires going back and forth. Thursday, we're going to Harrison County in Marshall, signed a case over there, also against now a former police officer there. So there's a lot of hours that go into outside of Upshur County because of the way the law's changed, and I guess I've become one of the more seasoned prosecutors around I don't want to say old, but one of the older ones around the area, currently still in office, so we receive a lot of those phone calls. Yes, sir, Mr. Mark.
Just because you're exempted, I'm assuming there's exemptions on summons when you get summons secured to
Yes, sir.
maybe age or whatever, but just because you're exempted or subject to an exemption doesn't mean you have to take that exemption, is that correct?
That is correct. You do not have to. That's right. That's right. And I appreciate you bringing that up. That's such a good point. And I know, sitting there listening to a bunch of lawyers talk to you or at you, you don't want to do that. I can't blame you. I can't blame you. But behind all of that is something so important that must take place in that courtroom. And just because you have the exemption, you do not have to claim it. It's certainly your legal right to do that. But I would encourage you to look beyond those things and really think about what you're doing serving the community when you respond. Yes, sir.
My question is about sending out these 400 summons to jury selection.
Yes, sir.
Is that random by the law, or do you have some selectivity that you can do when you send those summons out?
Oh, that's a good question. Yes, sir. That's just random. There's a database that has what we call the wheel. And the wheel is constituted of every time you go and do your driver's license renewals, or if you turn 18, you get put into the jury wheel. Or if you move, then that wheel has to be reconstructed. Old people that have moved taken out, new people added in. It's a random draw. So no lawyer, the district judge, no judge has any input in who is brought in. It's completely random.
Yeah, so that means I couldn't volunteer to get my name in there.
That's right. Yes, sir.
Additionally, what if you get on the jury and serve on the jury? Does that mean you won't be called for a certain period of time? Does that get you out of the loop?
If you're called and selected, then if you are selected, then you're going to have, if I recall, 1 year in which you can't serve on another pettit jury. But if you're not selected and you just get called but not selected, not seated in one of the 12 in district court, you're subject to being called back at any time. Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am.
So what do they do you know, to rehabilitate these children?
That's a good question about the rehabilitation. And I'll tell you, so many things are frustrating from when I remember when I first started to where we are today. We have cut a lot of budgetary items, and unfortunately a lot of those budgetary items involve rehabilitation, drugs, alcohol. We have a lot of that abuse with our young people, but also mental health is something that has really been cut over the years. That it's real. The idea that, well, we just need to spank him more. Well, I'm sorry, the mental illness truly exists in people's lives, and they need professional help that we, as a prosecutor, we're not equipped to do that. As a pastor, I'm not equipped to do that. You've got to have a professional who is trained to help them through therapy, through counseling. If medication is necessary, then medication. All of that, there are a certain amount of facilities in the state, and we have adults waiting in our county jail that you're paying for right now. We have adults that a year ago, 1 calendar year ago, was designated as incompetent to stand trial. I cannot try an incompetent person. That they are waiting to go to the mental hospital, state hospital, to get therapy and treatment as an adult. 1 year. During that year, you fed them, you've clothed them, you've medicated them, and they're sitting, and there's nothing, we can't turn them loose. We're sitting. And that's an example of what's going on in the state. A lot of states are dealing with that. In Texas, we are truly dealing with a real crisis there.
I have one more question.
Yes.
So do you know what the success rate is when they go to juvenile detention or to juvenile jail? What happens? What is it?
I couldn't give you, that's a good question, it's a fair question. I couldn't give you, I could have gone back and looked at that. We keep statistics on those things. I will tell you this, we've had a lot of success in our juvenile system on rehabilitating that we do not see as adult offenders. Now, I have had them come back as adult offenders, don't get me wrong. But we've had a lot of success between the amount that we've placed and those that we end up prosecuting as adult offenders. That I don't ever hear or see many of them anymore, which is a good thing. That's what you want. That's the goal. So the juvenile system in Texas is very strong and it has done a good job. Certainly it has its problems and flaws like everything else, but it's doing a good job from what I've seen. Some good questions. Any other questions?
Yeah, I got it.
Yes, sir.
We talk about a juvenile being tried in a juvenile court or juvenile thing. If a juvenile commits a crime and then all this thing's strung out and maybe 6 months later he becomes adult age, does he transition thing or does he stay in that thing even when he's 20 or 22 or 23 years old?
Y'all asked some good questions today. That's a complicated question too. It depends. A lot of things happen. First off, a juvenile is someone under the age of 17, so let's define that. Anybody under the age of 17 at 17, even if you're in high school, you're considered an adult. But to answer that question, if they're charged when they're 16 and at some point during the process while they're charged they turn 17, the juvenile laws still apply to them and they're tried under the juvenile statute. Now, exceptions to that are there are laws that allow the prosecution to go and get the person classified as an adult for purposes of trial. Very rare things happen. Certain things have to happen before we can do that. The other thing is we have a thing called the determinate sentencing. The juvenile trial coming up in next month, October the 19th, that's going to be a determinate sentencing trial. What's that mean? That means if found true, it's not guilt, it's true as a juvenile, that he did what the state's alleged, then if the jury sentences him to TJJD, Texas Department of Juvenile Justice, TJD, if they go there to Juvenile Department of Justice, then they will stay there up until they're 19. Then they can be transferred if they've not rehabilitated themselves to the adult system to live out a sentence all the way up to 20 years. So it gets complicated. But it's a good question.
Any other questions? Not? Billy?
Thank y'all very much.
Thank you, Billy. Always enjoy your programs. And John, I didn't recognize you a while ago, but we got John with us today. Good, and all of our guests come back anytime. Billy, thank you for drawing my number.
Thank you.
And yes, I was going to give you the 25% you asked for. I don't want to box. If there's no other business, let's stay. Oh, Tim, hold on just a minute. Yes, sir.
Literacy meeting this evening.
The literacy